Seven blessings. I'm Brienne of Tarth, this is Podrick Payne.
Brienne of Tarth is Sir Duncan the Tall's descendant. George R.R. Martin confirmed it himself. And once you see all the clues he left behind, you will never look at Brienne the same way again. Let's get into it. Before Game of Thrones, before House of the Dragon, before any of it, there was a kid named Dunk. Not a lord. Not a prince. Not someone with a family name or a castle or even a proper last name. Just a tall, big, clumsy boy from the slums of King's Landing, specifically from the worst part of the city, a place called Flea Bottom. The kind of place where you either die young or you learn to fight just to eat. Dunk did the second one. He started following around a broke, travelling knight called Sir Arlan of Penetree. And when I say broke, I mean this knight was barely holding it together. His armour was old, his horse was tired, and honestly, the man was not in great shape physically either. But Arlan took Dunk in, trained him, and gave him something that nobody else had ever given him before. A purpose. And when Sir Arlan eventually died on the road before reaching a tournament in Ashford, Dunk had to make a decision. He could walk away. Go back to Flea Bottom. Forget the whole thing. Instead, he decided to compete in the tournament himself. He told the steward his name was Sir Duncan the Tall, because he was tall and it sounded powerful. And with that, his story began.
I can squire for you, sir. And you can teach me. Best you can.
Now right around this same time, a young bald-headed boy followed him to the tournament grounds, begging to be his squire. Dunk said no. The boy showed up at his camp anyway. Dunk reluctantly took him in, and the boy told him his name was Egg. Just Egg. What Dunk did not know at the time, and what made everything both hilarious and terrifying in hindsight, was that Egg was not some runaway stable boy. Egg was Prince Aegon Targaryen, the youngest grandson of the sitting king. A literal royal prince was out here sleeping in a hedge knight's camp, picking up horse manure and pretending to be a commoner. And that friendship, that accidental, improbable, completely unlikely friendship between a poor orphan from the slums and a Targaryen prince, would last for 50 years and change the history of Westeros. That is what the HBO show A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is based on. And that is also where our story today really starts. So let's talk about who Sir Duncan the Tall actually was as a man, because understanding him is the only way to understand the connection to Brienne. Dunk was enormous. The books describe him as nearly 7 feet tall. Not just tall in a noticeable way. We are talking about the kind of tall where people stop mid-sentence and just stare. Where doorways are a problem. Where you have to duck under almost everything. But what made Dunk special was not the height. It was that he actually cared. In a world of knights who were knights in name only, who used their title to take things and hurt people, Dunk genuinely believed in what a knight was supposed to be. He believed in protecting people who could not protect themselves. He believed in honoring his word even when it cost him. He believed in doing the right thing even when the wrong thing would have been much easier and much safer. He was not educated. He was not elegant. He made mistakes constantly and was not particularly quick with his words. But when it came to the things that actually mattered, Dunk was as solid as stone. Over time, he and Egg travelled across Westeros together, getting into trouble, sorting other people's trouble out, and slowly building a bond that went far beyond what either of them could have expected from that first awkward meeting on the road to Ashford. Egg eventually became King Aegon V Targaryen, and when he did, Dunk became a member of his Kingsguard. Not just a member, the Lord Commander, the highest position a knight could hold, the man sworn to protect the king with his life. And that is exactly what Dunk ultimately tried to do. In 259 AC, Aegon V, the boy who had once shaved his head and pretended to be a stable hand, called his family together at Summerhall. Summerhall was a Targaryen pleasure castle in the Dornish marches, and Aegon loved it. He used it for celebrations and quiet retreats, and it was the kind of place that should have meant peace. But Aegon had a problem that followed him for his entire reign. He was obsessed with bringing dragons back into the world. All the dragons were gone by this point. The last of them had died out decades before. But Aegon had spent years collecting old Valyrian texts, sending people to far-off places like Ashai looking for knowledge, accumulating dragon eggs that had long turned to stone, and consulting with pyromancers who worked with wildfire. He believed, with everything he had, that it was possible to hatch those eggs and restore dragons to his family. At Summerhall, he tried. He gathered his family. He gathered 7 dragon eggs. He gathered pyromancers and wildfire. And something went catastrophically wrong. The fire that broke out was not a small fire. It engulfed the entire castle. What survivors there were refused to speak of it. The maester of the castle sent a letter before he died, and most of it was destroyed by ink blotting out the key details, so we do not even have a clean record of exactly what happened. What we do know is this. King Aegon V Targaryen died in that fire. His eldest son, Prince Duncan Targaryen, who had given up his right to the throne to marry a woman named Jenny of Oldstones, also died in that fire. And Sir Duncan the Tall, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, died there too, having reportedly saved several people from the flames before the fire took him. At least, that is what everyone believed for a very long time. Because here is where it gets genuinely wild. In a recent interview, Dexter Sol Ansel, the young actor who plays Egg in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, accidentally let something slip that George R.R. Martin had told him and his co-star privately. He said, and this is close to a direct quote from the interview, that Martin told them Dunk actually survives Summerhall, though whether Egg survives is still uncertain. His co-star Peter Claffey, who plays Dunk, immediately tried to interrupt and walk it back, making a gesture to cut the cameras, looking like a man watching someone spill a very large secret in public. But it was out there.
Yes. Yes, we have. I mean, I don't know about Peter, but I do know a bit about when Egg's trying to make dragons in the Summerhall, and then there's a huge fire. But we know from George. We don't
know if that is exactly what happened.
We know Dunk survives, but we don't know if Egg survives yet.
We don't know exactly what's happened, but let's just get this season 1 out of the way. And we'll see.
Yeah.
And considering it came directly from Martin, that completely changes everything. It means Dunk did not die at Summerhall. It means there are stories we have not seen yet. It means Dunk had more life after that fire, which is probably how Brienne came to exist in the first place. Now here is the part where everything clicks. George R.R. Martin, back in 2016 at a convention called Balticon in Baltimore, confirmed something fans had been debating for years. He said, directly, that Brienne of Tarth is a descendant of Sir Duncan the Tall, and that she does not know it herself. That single sentence landed like a sledgehammer, because once he said it, you could not unsee it. Start with the obvious, the height. Dunk is nearly 7 feet tall in the books. Brienne of Tarth, as described in A Song of Ice and Fire, is enormous by the standards of any woman and taller than most men she encounters. In the show, Gwendoline Christie, who plays Brienne, is 6 feet 3 inches, and the character is described as a physical force that people genuinely do not know how to process. Martin even used the same phrase to describe both of them in their respective stories. He writes that Dunk is built thick as a castle wall, and in A Feast for Crows, he uses almost that exact description for Brienne. That is not an accident. Martin does not write accidents. But the most concrete piece of evidence, the one that goes beyond physical similarity and becomes an actual clue you can point to and say this is a fact, is the shield. In A Feast for Crows, which is the 4th book in A Song of Ice and Fire, Brienne describes how as a child she found an old shield in her father's armory at Evenfall Hall on the island of Tarth. The shield had a sigil on it she did not recognize, an elm tree with a shooting star above it. She liked it so much that later, when she needed to travel anonymously, she had her own shield repainted with those same arms. In A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, in the show's 2nd episode, Dunk needs to choose a sigil for himself because he is not actually a blood relation to the knight who trained him and therefore cannot use that knight's arms. With Egg's help, he asks a painter named Tanselle, a woman he has become close to paint his new sigil. He asks for an elm tree with a shooting star above it. He had camped under an elm tree and seen a green shooting star fall through the sky on the night he arrived at the tournament, and he took it as a good sign. So Dunk's personal sigil, which he chose himself, ends up in the army of House Tarth on an island in the far east of Westeros, completely unknown to Brienne for her entire childhood. That is not lore that slipped in accidentally. Martin put it there on purpose, and then confirmed it on purpose, and the show is now showing us how it all began. How exactly is Brienne related to Dunk? That part, Martin has been coy about, saying the full details will be revealed in future books. But fans and lore experts have spent years working through the most likely explanations, and there are a few that make real sense. The most popular theory involves one of Prince Aegon's sisters. Egg had sisters named Rhea and Daela. In Martin's books, Rhea married someone, but the identity of her husband is never revealed. The theory goes that Dunk had a relationship with Princess Rhea, and the child that came from that union was eventually connected to House Tarth through marriage, making Brienne the result of that bloodline several generations down. Another version of the theory suggests Dunk survived Summerhall, which, as we now know from Martin himself, may actually be true, and that he went to Tarth afterward. Perhaps he settled there. Perhaps he had family there that nobody knew about. Perhaps someone related to him, a child born before Summerhall, was already living on Tarth. The showrunner of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Ira Parker, has said that Martin gave him 10 to 12 future Dunk and Egg stories that he can use to sustain the show. If Dunk survives Summerhall, some of those stories likely take place afterward, and it is entirely possible one of them involves a visit to Tarth that explains everything. There is also a small but interesting theory about Tanselle. She was the painter who created Dunk's shield with the elm tree and shooting star sigil. The books describe her as unusually tall, earning the nickname Tanselle Too Tall. The show also portrays her as tall. She and Dunk clearly have feelings for each other. If their relationship continued and they had children, and those children ended up connected to Tarth, that could also be part of the chain. We do not have a definitive answer yet, but the clues point in one direction, and they have been pointing there for a long time. Now think about what this actually means when you watch Game of Thrones knowing all of this. Brienne of Tarth is someone who got mocked her entire life. The boys at the ball her father threw for her were only there to make fun of her. They called her Brienne the Beauty as a cruel joke. She was too big, too strong, too serious, too different from what a highborn girl in Westeros was supposed to be. She loved Renly Baratheon, a man who could not love her back the way she wanted. She watched him die and could not stop it. She was blamed for it and had to run. She was captured and lost her hand, nearly. She swore vows to find and protect Sansa Stark and kept failing at them until she finally did not. And through all of it, she held on to this code. This genuine, unfashionable belief that a knight's word meant something. That protecting people mattered. That doing the right thing was not something you did when it was convenient, but something you did even when it cost you everything. Sound familiar? That is exactly who Dunk was. 100 years earlier, born in a completely different circumstance, but running on the same internal compass. In Game of Thrones Season 4, there is a brief moment where Joffrey is flipping through the White Book, which is the book that records the deeds and life of every knight who has ever served in the Kingsguard.
Sir Duncan the Tall. 4 pages for Sir Duncan.
He reads out that Sir Duncan the Tall served as Lord Commander during the reign of Aegon V, and he says something like, "Quite a man." And Jaime Lannister says dryly, "So they say." That throwaway moment is actually a huge piece of lore quietly sitting in the background of the show. Because that same book, the Book of Brothers, is what Jaime Lannister's page sits empty in when we first meet him. He has not done enough, or the right things, to fill his page. And the entire arc of Jaime Lannister in the later seasons is about whether he can become the knight he was always capable of being. And at the end of Game of Thrones, the night before the battle against the Night King at Winterfell, Jaime kneels Brienne down by the fire and knights her. He uses his sword and he says the words and he makes her Sir Brienne of Tarth. There is music playing in the background of that scene. The song is called Jenny of Oldstones. It is a song about Jenny, the woman who married Egg's eldest son, Prince Duncan Targaryen. Prince Duncan gave up his right to the Iron Throne to be with her, and she brought a woods witch to court who prophesied that the prince that was promised would come from the Targaryen bloodline, which set off a chain of events that led to the marriage of Aerys and Rhaella and the birth of Rhaegar Targaryen, who is Jon Snow's father. Everything is connected. Jenny of Oldstones loved a man named Duncan, who was named after Sir Duncan the Tall and died at Summerhall alongside him. And on the night that Brienne, Duncan's own descendant, receives her knighthood, that song plays in the background. If Martin planned that, and he gave the showrunners the lore, so there is a very real chance that detail was intentional, It is one of the most carefully constructed emotional callbacks in the entire franchise. There is one more thing worth talking about, and it ties the whole thing together in a way that is almost too good. At the end of Game of Thrones, after everything, Brienne ends up as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard for King Bran Stark. Let that sit for a second. Sir Duncan the Tall, a boy with no name and no family who clawed his way from nothing to become Lord Commander of the Kingsguard for Aegon V. Brienne of Tarth, a girl mocked her entire life for being what she was, who had to fight for every scrap of respect she ever got, who earned her knighthood sitting by a fire on the worst night of her life. Lord Commander of the Kingsguard for Bran Stark. 100 years apart. Same blood, same spirit, same destination, and neither of them knew it. Brienne never knew that the shield in her father's armory belonged to the man whose blood runs through her veins. She never knew that the values she held onto, when literally everyone around her told her to let them go, were not just her own personality, but something passed down through generations. Dunk died, or survived in secret, or whatever the final Martin reveal turns out to be, never knowing that what he built would last. That someone would carry it forward. That in a world that consistently rewarded the cruel and punished the decent, his particular brand of stubborn, honest, ridiculous goodness would survive. And that is why this connection matters more than just family tree trivia. It is not just that they are related. It is what that relation says about George R.R. Martin's larger point about the world he built. Game of Thrones is famous for killing good people. Ned Stark, Robb Stark. Every character you root for seems to end up dead while the cynics and the schemers thrive. And the show became culturally famous partly because of that. The idea that Westeros is a place where goodness gets punished. But Duncan and Brienne are Martin's quiet argument against that. Both of them survived things that should have killed them. Both of them held onto their codes when everybody around them abandoned theirs. And both of them ended up, against all reasonable odds, leading the Kingsguard of their respective kings. The good did not just survive. The good left a legacy. So the next time you watch A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and you see Dunk crashing his head into another doorframe, or trying to say something kind and saying something awkward instead, or picking a fight with someone twice as powerful as him because he cannot stand to let an injustice pass, remember what you are looking at. You are looking at Brienne of Tarth before Brienne existed. And the next time you watch Brienne standing in Jaime's firelight, taking her vows, or refusing to break her word when every other character on the show has long since stopped caring about theirs, remember what she carries. She carries Dunk. She does not know it. She has never been told. She just is it. Because some things run deep enough that 100 years cannot wash them out. That is George R.R. Martin's best secret. And now you know it. If you want more videos breaking down the hidden connections across the Game of Thrones universe, the things the show does not explain out loud, but that the books have been building for 30 years, subscribe right now. Hit the notification bell so you actually see the next one when it drops. And drop in the comments what connection you want covered next, because this world has more of them than most people realize, and we are just getting started.